All right, welcome everyone to another episode of the Non-Essential Workers Podcast. I'm your co-host Alex Ratiotis.
I'm Jason Ratiotis. Baby brothers, who's not sweet. I'm
We
saving.
can we can mix it up every time if you want, but I'll end again this time. I'm Aiden Callaghan.
I'm shaken, not stirred.
This is a sort of left-wing podcast approach to media, politics, government, bullshit, current events, whatever we feel like. And you're listening to it, so it worked. Jason, why don't you take us off this week?
Yeah. So last night when I was sitting in bed, I did what everyone does, which is pull out their phone and immediately destroy their brains having any fair chance of falling asleep, to just browse the news. And oh boy, was I impressed with the amount of gobbledygook garbage I found. So we will do what we did last time, which is go through some pure headlines, because that's where most Americans stop, and see what we think about them, see what we can infer, see if we can get in the brain of the article writer and the editor, and see what message they're trying to distill for us, the American populace. And I believe I will start with this one. This is from Vice, and the headline is, "Cops shut down roadblock because too many drivers were drunk." Now, the reason I love this is because actually isn't in America. This is from Canada. Why in the world do you think this happened?
Now that's it. How do you get to that point where you're like, okay, we tested the first six and the drunk, and we're like, okay, this is fine, but then we got to number 7. That's too many drunks. Like, what is the correct number of Canadian drunks? Is there a platonic ideal of Canadian drunks? Like, is there a certain number that's good?
The hand grenade of drunks.
I feel like my brain is even struggling with the basic message of this headline, which is, how do you shut down a roadblock? You unblock the road? Is that what they're saying?
I
Like
too was confused.
too many cars were slamming into each other Looney Tunes style and piling up?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, well, I actually kind of just assumed that meant like the highway's done, get the fuck off. It wasn't just a roadblock anymore. Now it's like a full on, barrier. But I guess the way it's written, probably your version makes more sense.
I know, it's also, a language difference. It is from Canada.
Yeah.
All right, so I read a little bit ahead, and as it turns out, they were actually doing their jobs of arresting all the people, but who blew drunk, but they ran out of tow trucks because they had exhausted all the trucks in the vicinity in the city, because something like a dozen or so people blew and they had to take all their cars away.
So what you're saying is, just in the sort of stop and frisk methodology they were using of just pulling over cars and seeing if people were drunk.
No, it's a checkpoint, Alex. So people drive up to it and they have to blow. It's not like stop and frisk. It's not like random pullovers.
Like, they didn't do anything that indicates that they were drunk, right? Like, they weren't swerving through traffic. They weren't didn't have something wrong.
I don't know. You go up to a driving checkpoint and that they know for high traffic areas, and they make you blow into a.
Yeah, I'm just saying that's pretty fucking questionable in the first place, if you ask me. But whatever. So let's say that they have this checkpoint. People show up to it and they blow into the breathalyzer just randomly, and they know they're going to a checkpoint ahead of time, and they know they're drunk, but they go to the checkpoint.
No, I don't think they know there's a checkpoint ahead. But the point is, so many people were drunk coming back that I guess we got ambushed at this checkpoint, that there was like a line of traffic going all the way back. And I guess at that point, if you're drunk, you should have realized, like, all right, it's time to do a U-turn and get the fuck out of here.
Right. I mean, what do you have to lose at that point? You're going to get arrested anyway.
But the reason I love this news story is because it just speaks to me about how we view the role of our police, and just what we feel is socially acceptable. Like, where is there like the highest per capita drunks driving currently? It just to me is a very funny take on modern life. And this is at 2 a.m. It reminds me of like the temperance movement, where like these guys come home from this horrible job, like getting lung cancer at the factory, and they just go right to the bar and then go right home to beat their wife. It's just a sign of the times.
Did you read enough or see the date or anything to know if this was like around a holiday in Canada, or if this was just, as you say, like random Tuesday in this part of Canada, time to crash our cars into random things and get pulled over?
I'm pretty sure it was this last weekend at 2 a.m.
Well, let's talk briefly about what the implicate, right? So, like, part of this section is to figure out what the public is taking away. If I'm a random Canadian reading this, or I guess whoever, since we're Americans, and I read this, I go, "Oh, everyone's drinking and driving."
Exactly.
I
And
may as
they've
well drink and
overwhelmed the
drive.
police.
Right? Like, this is like a victory for drunks. Like, they're basically saying, like, the drunks won,
It's about time.
which is, I don't know that that's the message you want to send if you want to discourage drinking and driving.
Yeah, the cops gave up. They impounded 14
it's
cars
like-
in 2
it's
hours.
like
All right, we're done.
Like the drunks have like unionized. Like if
Yeah.
all of us drink, like I'm Spartacus, like you can't pull us all over. So the implication of the article seems to be that not only is drinking and driving like an epidemic, but that it's like a victorious epidemic.
It's a political block. It's not the alcohol lobby. It's the drunk lobby.
Yeah, and
Big drunk.
Yeah, it seems like this would both encourage the behavior while also normalizing bizarre police shakedowns. It seems like it's the worst of both worlds to me.
I mean, maybe if you're really optimistic, you could take it that people will take away collective action can be fun, you know?
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be marching with picket lines and picket lines. It can also be drinking a lot together and collectively
Right.
overwhelming the police.
Right, drunk drivers of the world unite. We have nothing to lose but our licenses.
Hey, we need to start somewhere.
Yeah.
I just thought it was funny. That one got a little chuckle out of me when I was reading it last night. And I thought, other people need to hear the good news.
Spread the gospel.
All right, speaking of the signs of the times, here was an article from NBC. Parts of Lake Tahoe closed after chipmunks test positive for bubonic plague.
Jesus.
We've gone biblical already.
Right. First it was the wave of locust drunks. Now it's the plague chipmunks. Who knows what I'll pick next?
I mean, this one, I don't even know if this is like super manipulative so much as just like an idiotic event to be happening to us. Like that, like, I guess I would close down the lake if you might get bubonic plague. This is just like, this is one of those things that there's like the whiteboard and they're like, who had plague chipmunks as their bet for 2021, you know, like it was a whole like lottery of horrible things to happen.
Remember when remember we watched Train to Busan, Alex?
Yeah.
And the movie starts out with like an elk that's clearly becoming zombified.
Yeah.
To me, this feels like that. Like this is the start of a horror action thriller movie that is just 2021, or like that game of Plague Tale, where the chipmunks are now swarming around us to kill us.
Yeah, to me, this is just funny. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the only political take you could really give is to then look at what else didn't make the news that day on NBC.
Right,
like-
the editor, like Tahoe's like struggling. He's trying to anything relevant, any shootings, any bullshit, and
we can't report on coal miners striking, so fuck it, chipmunks.
and then the one guy in the newsroom goes, "The chipmunk story. I've been sitting on this one."
When you get really conspiratorial, be like, okay, there's like some really dark political scandal, and they're like, release the chipmunks, send the plague
shadow
chipmunks.
chipmunks.
They'll have to pay attention. It's bubonic plague.
Yeah, it's like Dishonored.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is just the natural consequences for taking the dark route.
All right. Well, speaking of plague,
Oh boy, good.
from Newsweek, Arkansas Governor Hutchinson regrets signing mask ban into law as state sees Delta surge. Now, what's your bet on how he handled either taking responsibility for this or not?
There's a lot going on in this sentence. Are they saying that he previously signed a mask ban, but now wishes he hadn't?
Yeah.
Okay.
He signed it back in April.
And the mask ban isn't just saying it's not a mandate, it's actively saying you should not or
Yes,
could be
you
punished.
cannot wear masks in Arkansas.
Fucking brilliant. That's like I don't agree at all with the governors and stuff. We're saying like, okay, we need to do like individual liberty or individual conscience to wear a mask, so I'm not going to enforce a mask mandate because that's still asinine and bad public policy. But this is just aggressively stupid.
This is
Like,
anti-public policy.
this is right. This is actively trying to kill the public to prove like a political point, and that's like, is this a crime? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, is
I would think so. I would categorize it as that. I had no idea about this. I knew about like DeSantis and Abbott saying that
yeah,
they can't mandate wearing a mask, but
No, Arkansas went full bore.
yeah, because this is like, don't get addicted to water, my friends. Like, this is like aggressively denying basic protection of life to people who are trying to protect themselves in the state. Like, are there cops like beating people for trying not to get COVID because of this? Like, do they unleash like the dogs and the hoses? Like, I don't know. Like, why is it always Arkansas? But anyway, there's a lot troubling just in the fact that this even existed in the first place.
Oh wait, hang on. I might be wrong. Regret signing a bill into law that bans state and local government authorities from implementing mask mandates. So okay, never mind. I wasn't. Not that you can't. Right, maybe we didn't. Oopsie. But you
Oh,
can't.
we're not supposed to know that.
You can't do mask. Well, whatever. I don't want to give this guy too much. I mean, his name's Asa, but which is
No, but the whole point is we don't know. We're reading just from headlines alone.
Yeah, but I don't want to be unfair if I know the truth.
But this is the headline, though.
Yeah,
Right. This is the headline. What do we take from the
it's a
headline?
reasonable interpretation.
Well, to answer your question before, how he responded, or took culpability, my best guess is that he blames some nearby blue state for spreading it or something.
No, that's a different headline I have for it.
Okay. All right.
I mean,
What do you think, Alex? How do you think he responded to this?
my suspicion is that he basically said Joe Biden failed to stop the coronavirus because he's a Democrat, and therefore this new variant came about because of Joe Biden. And as a consequence, now we're forced to go back on our previously patriotic policy because of how badly handled this was. That's my guess.
Reasonable, but I want to give Hutchinson even a little bit more credit than that.
Yeah, this guy seems like you really got to give him all the credit.
He doesn't blame any other individual in particular, but here's how he described how this worked. He goes, I know I shouldn't have signed it into law, but at this point, it's out of my hands. So there's only two ways to deal with this. Either it goes to our state Supreme Court, which he thinks would be bad, or the legislature rewrites the law. He can't do anything about it. It's like that time Obama was giving like a speech on immigration, and the guy behind him was like, just fucking legalize this all. He's like, well, the thing is, I decide to do executive powers when I want to. He's like, I know I'm the governor of the entire state, but I can't do it. But I can't undo it. That's now up to you guys.
So I guess he's trying to just be a procedural doctrinaire follower of institutions, which is very important right now. As we're all
he's like, what's most important right now? Jurisprudence.
Yeah, he's trying to dilute his own responsibility with bureaucracy, which is
nothing instills more confidence in democracy than watching it fail.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like we were talking about last time, where the eviction ban fell out, expired, and then each chamber of the House and the Senate and the president were like, hey, this was your guys' job to fix this, not mine.
Yeah,
I can't possibly be held responsible for this.
Did you know that 5 Supreme Court justices, almost all of them Republicans, said that it would be unconstitutional to do the moratorium? What a surprise!
I really enjoyed how, after the initial back and forth of pointing at different chambers and then at the different branches of the government, someone had a light bulb and they're like, wait, I think we could also blame the CDC for this as well. Let's just keep kicking that can around.
Yeah.
And then, of course, 2 days later, actually, I guess I can do something, Biden realizes.
All right. Speaking of taking credit and dissuading blame for things, here's a story from CNN. CNN, more than $170,000 raised in 24 hours for mother and 3 kids facing eviction.
Yeah.
Now, at first glance, you might think, oh, this sounds so positive and heartwarming.
No, I would not.
And then it sets in. Why do you think I picked this?
What do you want to go ahead?
I would assume because it's one of the infinite stories that the press loves to put forward to distract from systemic problems by offering individual solutions that are actually depressing if you look at them with any kind of objectivity.
Yeah, I mean, this is the orphan crushing machine joke. Like this is the whole premise of thing that is horrible that should not exist is momentarily averted for a single instance by the heartwarming charity of the American people.
But
I,
it's not merely averted, because
okay.
this woman and her kids were behind $2,000 on rent. Only $2,000. And the day before this article, CNN wrote an article about her case. So exactly one day later, CNN writes a headline saying, "Look what good job we did. We brought eyes to this story. We take credit for the $170,000 being donated."
I will say on the face of it, it's still a less depressing headline than you normally see about this kind of stuff. Like you normally see like 4-year-old works entire year using every free hour they have to scrape together enough cash to pay off
Who
their
also has cancer.
classmates' lunch debt. This is yeah, this is probably just like a bunch of internet liberals donated a bunch of money to help these people.
Right, but there's not an article. There's not an article that says like, for every one of
Exactly.
these, there's 10,000 people who just get evicted. Like this is not the story. This is the exception. They're literally writing the exception instead of the rule when they have the choice to write either, because the exception glorifies capital and charity and America, and the
Exactly.
rule
Yeah,
would be horrifically
not only
depressing.
is it the exception, it's a totally gross and disgusting overpay compensation for what the family was actually going through. There are, as you say, there are 100,000 other people, or let's actually divide it up evenly. 170 divided by 2,
85.
$85,000. Or there could have been 85 other families who all had $2,000 rent back pay that could have been compensated for this. But no, we have ordained one random chick who we feel particularly bad for and her kids, who, not saying they aren't deserving of a quality life. Obviously, that's what we would advocate for. But they get randomly overpaid for no reason other than someone with a camera and a news source put them on the front page. And now they are disgustingly overcompensated and like in shock and withdrawal dealing with this. And now it totally changes their life. It totally changed. They might have to move. Like, it totally throws their life in another whole direction. And everyone else who's suffering from the exact same thing, because millions of people may get evicted, just go like, I guess I wasn't the lucky one who had got a news station in front of my house.
I mean, we are so many injustices deep in this headline that it's hard to even count them all. Like, first we have the fact that a moratorium is not actually a cancellation, it's just a temporary pause. So all of these people who are getting this moratorium are eventually going to have to pay the entire amount that they would have had to pay. So the moratorium is a disgustingly right-wing take on what should have been rent forgiveness, which is to say, if people can't work, they can't make the money they need to pay rent. So it should have been Biden fights to make sure we have rent forgiveness. Then you have the fact that the moratorium is being ended, which is just a slap in the face on top of it never even being very good in the first place. Then you have the fact that it's now being given out in a lottery system by who has media attention, as opposed to, even a mildly egalitarian form of this already pathetically inadequate charity. Then you even have the foundational premise of why are rent-seeking parasites controlling real estate, determining whether we live or die? Like, the entire premise of landlordship is unethical. But we're like so many steps deep in this chain of events that we can't even negotiate any of the really significant questions, because we're desperately fighting over like whether we get like 3 scraps of crud or 2. Like we're so defeated that the argument we end up having is like, how much of this already incredibly right-wing charity do we get to barely subsist on or not? It's depressing for so many reasons.
I love the idea that we can't, we can't have entitlements. We can't have benefits that affect everyone. So we just have, as Aiden said, random internet liberals spending their disposable income on random families at a time. It's to me, it's like a fundamental breakdown of what the role of the government's supposed to be, house, protect, keep alive its citizens. And now it's just in the hands of like the internet mob. Even if that mob is trying to do something good, Like they all knew that the GoFundMe was for $2,000. They all knew they could have gone to another GoFundMe. They all knew there were a billion other things they could have done with their money. But they just decided to shower this one woman with, as you say, essentially a lottery for being poor and disenfranchised. And it's just such a crazy like convulsion of our economic system that we just have these weird like sun, you know, like when the sun shoots out like a big molten beam of like what do they call those solar flares? This is like a capitalism solar flare. Where there's like a random shot out to just make one person's life manageable while everyone else is still suffering, burning up.
It's just, I mean, more than half of GoFundMe's are for medical bills, right? Like we are at a point where we are using privatization of charity and individual conscience to cover impossible to cover gaps in the basic like welfare state apparatus of the country. And we should not be celebrating putting band-aids on gangrenous wounds. Like these are not solutions.
Or just giving 1 in 1,000 people like the vaccine for to live forever now. It's like it's just pure lottery. Just this one woman. Now, obviously, her story is particularly sad, but just you get to live, everyone else gets to die.
Right, but it's just this is not a solution. This is a distraction at best from the fact that all of these people are facing eviction, and we do not have a solution. And so the story should really just be pray that you are struck by a lightning like this woman, essentially, and have your problem solved because government ain't doing it.
Get good, just go viral. Just get successful. Just even if you don't, get money by working hard, just get a news camera in front of your face, and that counts as working hard and getting the support of thousands of people.
Yeah, one of the most saddening things that I frequently see on Twitter is people asking or begging, influencers and famous people on that website to retweet dire things that they need to keep living or remain above the poverty line.
Please, sir, just a retweet, sir.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. And
just a crumb of a follow back.
Yeah, it's grim shit.
It's not even clout though. Like we're not talking about people who are like, please retweet my ass.
No.
I can compete. It's like, yeah, please retweet my lack of insulin. Right? Like it's insane. It's stuff that was arbitrarily made inaccessible to people to coerce us even more into this insane lotteryism and desperation porn to try to get people to pay attention to us so that we get the charity we need to fix a problem that isn't fixable this way. So it's every part of this is wrong.
On top of desperation. Love it.
Yeah, this is watching the plane crash in real time.
Right, exactly.
And going like, look, someone jumped out.
Whose parachute
someone survived. Yeah. This person slid down a ramp of corpses of their fellows, and they
what a hero!
Look at this guy. He's a
you
hero.
Won't believe this inspiring story.
Yeah, and then like right next to it is like 291 killed, and it's like I don't know. It's not good.
All right. Speaking of people responsible for making insulin prices go up and giving everyone healthcare bills they can't afford, The Guardian. In tears before I even logged in, Cigna call center workers challenge working conditions. Cigna, of course, one of the largest healthcare providers on the planet.
Well, I assume that this is working class people recognizing the horror of begging corporations to provide them with benefits that they think that they are guaranteed when they are denied at every corner to try to save profits and force you to give up on the things that you've paid for when it comes to health insurance. Am I right?
Well, hold on, because once again, this is one of these articles where it centers the wrong thing. Yes, it sucks to be in a call center and have people on the phone abusing you. If you're a service worker, you probably have it fucking bad in this country, let alone.
Well, I don't think that's not even what I was thinking it was about. But go ahead.
See, I read this as, look at how upset these Cigna call workers are in these bad working conditions because people are calling up and screaming at them and crying at them because of how bad their stories are, and they're just like they're getting either abused or begged or getting the kind of the full 9 yards all the time because of how desperate the medical situation is right now. But the article centers the Cigna call center workers as the victims. And now I will admittedly say it's rare that any workers get centered. And I guess that's not the worst it could have been. It could have been like, look at how bad it is to be a Cigna CEO right now. Like, sure, it could be even worse.
Yeah, but Alex, do you think they're gonna say, the Guardian, we shouldn't have private health insurance anymore? That's not gonna be the headline.
Well, yes, because they're the Guardian's a British newspaper. They have a strong public health insurance. Like,
They're covering American.
Anyway, right. I guess what I'm saying is,
and they're on the verge of tearing down their own NHS.
The people in the people in the greatest danger and grief and loss and suffering are the people who do not have their medical things covered.
No, Alex,
it's not the people who have to hear about it. It's just like, again, I'd rather hear about them than the CEO. But if someone's like, hey, I'm gonna die in 2 weeks because I can't get a liver transplant, and they call up Cigna and they're like, is there anything you can do? And Cigna's like, that's beyond our price range. And then they get yelled at because this person knows they're on death's door because of an incredibly preventable thing. It's like, yeah, they should be screamed at. I mean, not them specifically. Like, the company should be torn down, but the fact that someone is screaming at them should be 100% expected and normal given how awful the institution is. It's like saying, torturer at Guantanamo Bay suffers emotional breakdown from the reactions of the tortured. Like, what? Yeah, you know what?
A little harsh.
Like, what do you like? I mean, for fuck's sake, like, this is a criminal enterprise. The fact that healthcare is not treated as a human right should be a criminal reality. Like, but we're still writing about it as though the person who is victimized is the person working for the system that is killing people.
It also mentions the people being given the runaround by. It also mentions the customers. But this is a labor article about literally the workers of Cigna coming together to write petitions to try and get, essentially, Amazon quality piss in a bottle shit removed.
Oh, good. So there's also horrific abuse of them from the top down.
It's not just, you're monitored by a huge amount of metrics. So your calls have to only be 5 to 10 minutes long. You have to resolve it by then. We monitor every action you do. There's an app on your phone that monitors what you do. Right. By the way, all the profits they made this year, instead of doing anything with that money, they're just doing stock buybacks next year or next 4 years. So it's funny. It's some good stuff. Cigna, as evil as we all thought they were.
I just want to point out, healthcare as a human right is like a centrist position in most of the industrialized world. Like, if you're a conservative party in most of Europe, healthcare is a human right. And they'd be idiots to try to fight that in their political platform. Whereas in one of the only countries where it's not, even papers from countries where it is treated as a human right aren't mentioning that. Like, it's one of these things that's become like American exceptionalism with no rationale at all.
I think right off that point, the brilliance and oxymoronicness of American conservatism is that it's in their self-interest to keep older voters alive, and they refuse to do it. Like, the rest of the world, conservative world knows. Like, yeah, healthcare is important because old people vote the way we do mostly, and we need to keep our voting bloc alive. And America's like, nah, fuck them, let them die. We'll care. We'll make it up somehow, somewhere. We'll just steal every election instead of trying to keep our citizens alive.
We'll expand the definition of whiteness to include 51% of the population again, to make sure that we've made up for the dying old people.
It's funny because you're exactly right. The rest of the world look, fucking Rousseau and John Locke and who's the guy with the Leviathan? I always forget. Hobbes. Thomas Hobbes, who was a psycho, knew that the fundamental job of the government is to keep you alive. And America's like, nope. It's no, show me that in the Constitution. Oh, life and liberty and pursuit of happiness? Fuck that shit.
Yeah. There's no timeline on life.
Big dick life. God, this article's so great. All right. Where to go next? There's a fork I could go here. I'm gonna go with this one. And it's also especially rich considering the source. All right. MSNBC. I can barely even get through it. America's two major political parties are simply too big. Too big.
Oh boy.
Exactly. One, it's inscrutable. But two, it's like, we can actually start to break this down, and oh boy, does this fall apart like the town in Blazing Saddles.
So I'm going to assume, with what limited sort of poli-sci language they're using, that they're saying their tent is too big, like that they're including too many radicals on the fringes
Yeah,
who are dragging them away from their enlightened centrism towards some sort of illiberal options like universal health care, or having full voting rights, or white genocide, depending on which side of this you're on. Like it's that same horseshoe shit about like populism and like Trumpism is somehow the same as Sandersism, and that if only we could return to everyone being one huge centrist right-wing party, we would be good again.
Well, yeah, because we can certainly eliminate some things. Like they're definitely not advocating for the formation of a third party, and certainly even beyond that, not a progressive one, obviously.
No.
And I can't imagine that MSNBC is saying that we need a more conservative party. I guess maybe they could be saying that we need like a bipartisan coalition
even
that
dumber.
solidifies into a third party. But wow, because that I
Three
almost blacked
parties
out
is
trying
right
to say
out.
that. So go ahead.
What's the ideal number of parties? 4. They say that they say take the Republican Party for example. Both parties should split in half, and John Kasich should be the leader of the moderate Republicans, and Donald Trump should be in charge of the barbarian Republicans. And that if each party had a actual segmented moderate and psycho, polar wing, somehow this would increase government efficacy. Yeah.
But they're just like asserting this, like they understand the concept of first past the post electoral systems, right? Like that's not how this
They
works.
don't mention changing our constitution to change how
like right. Do they mention the idea of ranked choice voting?
No.
Do they mention the idea of a parliamentary distribution in Congress? Like, do they mention any of the blatant obstacles to how this would be done?
No Condorcet shit, no good stuff.
So it's just straight up like in our perfect world, we would all be enlightened centrists and we'd be fighting the barbarians at the gates known as Trumpers, and yeah.
Here's what they don't like. They don't like that Pelosi and Bernie Sanders are in the same party. They don't like that John Kasich and
I don't like
Donald
either.
Trump are in the same party. They want to divide even more because what's our biggest problem? We're actually too unified.
So this is just more of that. Yeah, this just sounds like another person who wants to go back to the polite old times, but admits that you can't just vaporize people off the face of the earth. So you need to push the radicals of each party to some edge, and their genius solution is to just give them
full party structure.
Well, this is a kind of a hilariously subtle way of saying, what if we simply liquidated the radicals? Like this is a really just a polite way of saying kick them completely out of any sort of political power. Because I guarantee you that the centrist right-wing coalition of Kasich to Pelosi corporatists would retain all meaningful power. They would immediately make it so that there's no way for the other people to have any touch of power. Like
Oh, by the way, who do you think wrote this article?
You know that famous case of the guy who survived like getting a railroad tie through his skull? That's my guess. I'm sorry. Yeah, he could be a famous leftist.
By associating with this. Yeah, that guy was working, in the industrial workers of the world.
This is not some obscure, like 20-something, who's in the Gulag Center at MSNBC. This is written by Chuck Todd.
Yeah, that tracks. This is the kind of like smooth-brained non-solution that also advocates for purging the left that I would expect from MSNBC.
But my favorite part is that even on its face, if you didn't read the article, just the title, it's intrinsically wrong. The parties in America today represent fewer and fewer people than they ever have. The people who actually believe in the Republican Party is like 30% of the country. People who actually are Democrats are about 30% of the country. And the rest, the plurality of people do not feel any of the political parties align with them. So the idea that the parties are too big, I mean, sure, from a power perspective, maybe, but from a camp perspective, no.
Right, because the Democrats have become a pure corporatist party,
right.
and the Republicans have become a fascist
The majority
party.
of people,
Where do
who are
workers
workers and
go?
just normal people, don't fit into either of those. So the idea that these parties are too big, no, they're both tiny. They're both tiny, non-representative body machines that operate the country.
Right, because we have
Right,
a
very
conservative party and an extreme conservative party. We don't have a working person's party. So the idea that the parties are too big, it's like, no, the parties are too like obscuritan and eccentric and far right. Like they have no real relationship to the vast majority of people's needs or wants or political aspirations. Saying they're too big is, I guess, true if you're saying like too powerful, but their tents are actually not that big at all. The only thing they don't like is that they've got people like Kasich and Trump in the same party because Trump says the things Kasich wants in a way that's vulgar.
My favorite assertion from
and
Todd
they don't like that.
is that if you officially divided the Republican Party, they'd stop getting along. They'd stop coalition building and saying, "Fuck it, let's just just because you put like a do not cross this line in this house, suddenly they're not going to do it." It's crazy. It's like, so if Bernie's not in the Democratic Party, he'll stop voting with the thing that he feels is the most ethical thing on the table. Like,
by the way, he's not.
I know
he's an independent. He's always been an independent. Like, he's not even in the party. Like, these people get angry at Bernie because he's not in the party, but then when they want to say that the party's become captured by the left, then they say he's in the party. Like, this isn't even factually correct. Like, they basically are asserting that there's like a left wing, a far left and a far right hijacking of the American political system. Joe Biden is president. Like, they could not have gotten a more right-wing Democrat as president. How on earth? I mean, you're saying these articles from the last few days. How on earth are they still looking at this going like there's this insurgent left wing that's like devouring the party? We were totally crushed. We were routed.
According to Chuck Todd, Hillary's the center left.
I love radical Marxist.
It's so good.
I don't even.
It's so
good.
She
really thinks that anymore. Like, I don't even think
Todd
she
is the
believes
only
that.
human on the planet who believes that.
Yeah, like she would barely call herself a centrist at this point. Like, she was on speeches like, I'm a representative of Wall Street. Like, she was not saying she was center left.
All right, speaking of divisiveness, another Guardian. The latest terrible pandemic. Oh shit! I fucked it up. God damn it!
This is a false flag.
All right, let me try this again. Hang on, I can edit it.
You have to read so people know why we're laughing, though.
I know.
You have to own it.
The Guardian. The latest terrible pandemic trend: vaccine hypocrites. Now, the reason I lost it is because in my document I wrote secret good article because I was trying to quiz them if they could figure out which is the article I liked, and I just copy pasted the whole thing over. Oh my god, I'm a dumbass.
It was outstanding move. So let's figure. Now the question is why, right? So let's figure out what this is even talking about because I'm not 100% yet. Is a vaccine hypocrite someone who promotes vaccines but is not vaccinated, or someone who got vaccinated but did not promote vaccines?
You're onto the trail.
It's from the Guardian again. I mean, because the obvious cases we're familiar with is like all the Fox News pundits who have been vaccinated
who've all been
months,
vaccinated,
but still spout vaccine agitprop. Where's your money?
It's a Guardian article, right? So I'm assuming that it's criticizing anti-vax, which makes me think that it's the Republicans. Still, I guess, correct from an ethical perspective that is a monstrous thing to do, is to mislead the public and allow them to become horrifically ill and or killed while you evade that by taking the security measures you claimed were bad. So yeah, I mean, I don't find any fault with that being evil, I guess, if that's the argument.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing though to call it a terrible pandemic trend, because like they've already spouted the horrible rhetoric. So I guess the fact that they're vaccinated is good. You know,
so here's the kicker.
Unless you want them to die, I guess.
Only in recent months have a lot of these right-wing propagandists been started to be asked if they've been vaccinated. So I think the author's saying that's the trend.
That's a violation of my HIPAA rights.
That's literally what Marjorie Taylor Greene said,
and
the author mentions in this article. So the article begins in a hilarious way It's talking about people in like Missouri who are putting on disguises to go get their vaccine because they don't want their anti-vax friends, family, and neighbors to know they went and got their
That's
vaccine.
not what a hypocrite
Because
is.
anti-vax propaganda. No. That's just the sage state, the table setting for the case against these propagandists. But so the intro is this image that's being painted that the anti-vax has gone from like 5 years ago, like wine moms on Facebook, which make up, I don't know, 3% of the population, to now legitimately approaching half of the country has become anti-vax. Which is, in terms of conspiracy theories, this might be the most successful and fastest rising conspiracy theory ever concocted that has gotten the most buy-in the most quickly. So basically, there are people who are like in secret, like Handmaid's Tale, putting on disguises and wigs and mustaches and sunglasses to go get the vax because of the social shunning and shame they will get for revealing they believe in science and health. And I find that image so funny.
This is the Predator meme with the white arm and the black arm shaking. And the one side is Trump and the other side is Andrew Wakefield. And it's just
That's the guy with the falsified autism shit.
yeah, who published the autism vaccine thing. Because the territory, like the soil was fertilized a long time ago for this. Like it has now been decades of disinformation about the supposed risks of vaccines as a concept. Like anti-vax sentiment was well established before Trump started saying his stupid shit.
But it was still tiny. It was well known, but people who genuinely
Right,
believed
but
it
there were
were just
millions
the
of people who
psychos.
believed it, and they weren't all concentrated on one side of the political aisle. Which
That's true.
right.
There was actually a lot of
But like
not left
normal
wing,
normal
but people
Democrats
who
and
would
apolitical
espouse, yeah.
people who believed it. And Trump then
But the
hyper
raw numbers were
like
very
between
low.
like QAnon and Trump then hyper normalizing conspiracy theory. All of these
Right.
people who had
Yeah.
kind of been
Exactly.
this small and extremely fucked up minority who were letting like their children die of like syphilis, like all of these people suddenly became like national heroes on the right. And so like these people who had probably not
Yeah.
even been particularly right wing consistently or had no real politics, they were just kind of cranks. Suddenly they're getting like enormous clout and status as having like been trendsetters of dumb. And so now you have Trump basically saying like all this time, all this time, folks, look at them. They knew. They read the articles. They read that retracted false article. They knew. And so like
Right. It turns them into martyrs or people who had the secret information from the outset, which is exactly what conspiracy theories are
right,
about. Which is saying I have the secret information no one else has.
right. So it just has this bizarre like look, all along we've been dumb. Now you can join us. Now you can join the winning side, the side that's not corrupted. Like and it's also like one of the bleakest things about it is that this preys on truth to a degree, which is like huge medical companies, and that develop,
Right. We have Tuskegee.
you
We have
know,
all sorts
but
of
not just
crazy
that.
shit.
Like huge pharmaceutical companies do not have your best interests at heart. Like
Like we were talking about earlier with Cigna. Like there was a big story going around about the opioid crisis. There was a big settlement
right.
finally. We'll get to
So
that later.
like
But like,
yes, the public is correct to be foundationally suspicious of huge corporations in control of their healthcare, but that the cognitive leap to get from we need to radically overhaul and reform how health is done in this country to I'm not going to vaccinate myself against a lethal disease and I'm going to allow it to spread to other people is a kind of enormous leap to make, and it's really only possible because so many people are saying that this is a normal thing to do and even a virtuous thing to do if you're in the wrong part of the country.
Yeah, yeah. I see it almost as a not almost. I see it as a natural kind of extension of like a glorification and like the courage of anti-intellectualism. It's the same kind of idea in some ways as the anti-climate change movement. This kind of distrust of science as a way to be a pillar of your party or your right wing ideology or wherever you identify, and also just like to continue to conflate the scientific community in all corners with, I guess, East Coast elites and all of their
yeah,
all of their baby drinking and adrenochrome use.
I love Exactly. Like, this is the Democrat version of Ben Shapiro's like fiction novels, where it's like, in a world where people who secretly want to get healthcare are shunned by the community. Like, there's the idea that people are disguising themselves. They don't want to deal with the social pressure because the anti-vax people are the moral heroes of their town. Is just peak, like, ironic America today. Just this image of, like, they're wearing the fake nose and glasses because they don't want to die. Oh God,
it's terrifying that these people have social circles where they'd be like, I need to wear, right, as you say, like a Groucho Marx, like fake nose and mustache, because my friends will think I'm a bad person for not murdering everyone.
For increasing their likelihood of survival.
Right, like they're not getting angry at them because they like got an abortion. Like they're not doing something that's like at least like vaguely controversial. They're literally just protecting themselves and others from a disease. At the absolute worst, according to the right-wing conspiracy theories, they'd be harming themselves.
Nah, but Alex, 5G and the crazy lady about we separate the shit and women around people with vaccines are having more periods or some bullshit. Like, people are insane.
This is like if someone wore a seatbelt and then all their friends walked around the car and were like,
"How dare, good sir!
What kind of little bitch wears a seatbelt?" It's like the seatbelt is like it doesn't affect you in any way.
You don't want to become a projectile in an accident.
Like it gets right back to like the banning the wearing of masks. Like it only affects the person wearing it as far as discomfort or like. What are you asking? Like, it doesn't affect you in any way. These people who get so up in arms about civil liberties have zero fucks given about people's civil liberties.
The article ends with
really incredible.
The article ends with the author shitting on Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson because both of them have publicly deflected answering the question whether they've been vaccinated or not. And the other reason I like
Marjorie Taylor Greene has Marjorie Taylor Greene ever been present in the same room as Sacha Baron Cohen?
No,
like
he needs
do we know it is not him?
She's like 5'2", Alex. He's 6'8" or some shit.
He had an experimental procedure done to make it possible because she is a cartoon.
He should try and do his like he did the Israeli like IDF soldier thing where he got a bunch of Republican interviews. He should try and like do a QAnon documentary and just go talk to her. But the final reason I like this article is because in the art, like you see a picture of the woman who wrote it, and she just has the most resting bitch face because you can clearly tell from the photo she's like, I've had enough of this shit. I'm so tired of these assholes. I'm so tired of anti-vax people that like I just see it on her face. It's such a great picture.
That's taken after she finished writing the article.
Exactly. Like it's like a UFC event where they take new photos every time.
I guess what the other thing I would say is, what are these people afraid of? Like
losing their audience, seeming like hypocrites to their massive audiences.
But like, I picture it's like the lead up to the Holocaust. Like they're wearing like little gold stars on their arm because they got the vaccine.
Yeah,
like they're branded. They have like a pink triangle. Like they're branded with any of like the you're in the lower caste of people who were such wimps to get this thing. Like, there's no real consequences for getting the vaccine. No one's gonna like follow to your house and kill you for getting the vaccine. Like this is like managing to be like, look at us, we're so persecuted because we got the vaccine. It's like this is whiny even for the people who are doing the right thing. I don't know what's gonna happen to them.
All right, I got two more. This one from the esteemed CNN Business. Why remote work is a big problem for the economy.
Wow, how specific.
Oh yeah, we're checking all the boxes today, I see.
You know the economy. Have you ever met the economy?
Oh,
Alex,
economies are people too.
Yeah.
You might be able to guess, Alex, because you've read inane shit like this before. I'm not sure, Aiden, if you'd be able to guess what the crux of this guy's argument is, but it is like the best swing from left field you could imagine.
I'm gonna guess that they're making. I mean, it's CNN Business, so they're probably talking about the economy means Wall Street and the stock market. So let's assume somehow remote work is bad for Wall Street, which probably means that remote work is causing fewer and fewer people to be disciplined by coercive mechanisms of managerial control.
They're getting wild working from home.
and therefore they're kind of like learning too much independence, and like they're
Becoming self-aware.
yeah, like exactly, like it's creating like a class consciousness of like techno
Where are my
workers.
finance drones?
Like it's basically the opening to the Matrix. Like he's starting to believe, like that he didn't need to work.
Imagine
at a
they're
fucking,
working from their vat.
Yeah, exactly. A guy in a suit and tie and with like 6 laptops like wakes up and starts gasping for air, and he's like, "It's I could have worked from home this whole time."
I can fuck
Yeah,
during my lunch
exactly. He
break
gets
now.
flushed out into a vat of goo.
I can
or
now
whatever.
see my baby.
Yeah.
That's an actual article I
What's
saw.
funny? Yeah, go ahead, Aiden.
Is that remote workers are having sex during the
And
workday,
putting it
and
on
that's a
stream.
big problem. Yeah,
They're all starting
Anyways, go ahead.
OnlyFans and making more money than we were paying them.
Yeah, they're all becoming the new pornographers.
Alex,
Yeah,
I love your
everyone is now
idea,
porn.
but you couldn't be more cold.
All right.
Aiden, what do you think?
I mean, I've seen, I feel like dozens of these types of articles, although maybe not if it's that left field.
It's so great. It's like a comedian couldn't come up with this punchline I'm about to tell you.
Maybe I'll just guess something absurd then. No, I mean they're always like what Alex said about like a kind of encouragement of freedom in the workplace, which is unacceptable, or it's something else dumb, like but maybe with a tiny fragment of logic, like if people don't come into work, then the restaurants around these big companies
you're
don't
close,
get as much money.
Yeah, or like gas prices are falling because no one's driving.
You're getting there. You got hotter.
Yeah,
completely stupid that we
All
shouldn't
right,
even be
ready
doing
for
the
this
podcast.
killer opening line?
Let's hear it.
Love it or hate it, commuting is good for the economy. You
Yeah.
pay train conductors' salaries with your subway fare. The dry cleaner by the office and the coffee shop around the corner all count on workers who have been largely absent for nearly a year and a half.
Wait, okay. I worked in the city for a while. Who brings their laundry to
you're not
work?
dry cleaning.
No,
when
you're
you bring it
after
back
work.
down
You
from
go to the dry
Connecticut?
cleaner, strip, give them your vomited on suit, and then just walk home naked.
Yeah.
Well, you have to do it twice because you had sex in the middle of the day, and now you had to.
Staying home is likely to delay the recovery of the vital office-adjacent economy. Think of the office-adjacent people.
Oh, yeah. A term that existed for sure before this article.
I don't.
Also, who do you think helped do the research for this article? According to economists from Goldman Sachs,
a dog? Oh, okay.
Office attendance in large U.S. cities is only about 1/3 of pre-pandemic levels.
It's something far less loyal.
That's a lot of employees who are still working remotely and not spending cash on items like train tickets or lattes. The kind of economic activity is essential in America's consumer spending and service-driven economy.
So they're all doing the thing that all the millennials are killing their own finances articles have been whining about, which is stop going to coffee places and eating avocado toast. Now that we're no longer going to coffee places and eating avocado toast, we're killing
the boomers like, wait, no, go back to being things.
Wait, go back to the avocado toast. They really want it both ways, huh?
They just want to shit on everyone.
Frivolous spending down is killing the economy.
Think of the train conductors.
It's almost like that's a fucking public utility that should have been paid for anyway.
I pay your salary, motherfucker.
This train has to go where I demand.
And they threw the train conducting guy in jail. God,
let's not get back to that.
It's a very old story of this guy who keeps getting arrested because he keeps driving trains that he doesn't have the right to. He's a national hero.
He's very passionate.
What a hero.
Yeah, this is real. This is a real real reach to try to create a problem.
Like this makes the Chipmunks with plague story seem like the only things important to do. What's the New York Times slogan? All the news is fit to print. Good God!
This is like reduction in mass shootings from COVID has reduced the amount of doctors who can specialize in bullet removal.
I mean, the gun companies generally do make this argument. They're like, our sales are going down.
Yeah. I'm just saying, every other time in our recent history, anything that is seen as contributing to the congestion and inefficiency of commuting is like one of the biggest problems for our economy. Like urban planners have to spend an enormous amount of time trying to reduce the reliance on and the problem of commuting. And this article is like how I, stopped worrying and learned to love the commuting. Like it's not only not a problem, it's like a great boon.
Yeah.
It's really twisted.
All right. So if you go ahead. Ian.
This is just one last thing. This is also just like one of the infinite examples of the fact that no neoliberal, no liberal, no conservative who professes to love the free market really loves
They all hate it.
Like they just, anytime anything changes, anything is challenged, it's just
right. We're
no,
all the
it's
libertarians.
wrong,
Like this is the disruption in the market we've all been looking for dynamism and ingenuity, and what's the other word they use a lot for, like, creative whatever. I don't know.
There's so
all
many
the buzzwords.
There's so many buzzwords.
All right, so if you thought that article was nearly fully mask off, here they just fully rip it off and show you the scorpion face.
No, the Missouri governor was full mask off.
This is from Inside Hook, which I didn't know what the fuck it was, but the headline was too good. When society collapses, you'll want to live in these 5 places.
This is really telling it like it is.
Like, we know it's on the way out. Move to these 5 states for desperate survival.
When the world has become uninhabited and all real people are living in a tiny man-made ring circling the Earth.
Right? When we're on the Elysium,
when we've all become Elysium, this is the part of the satellite that you want to live on.
Yeah, it's just like a one of those classic like cheeky stories that are like HGTV or something, except the host is wearing a gas mask and is like in the ruins of a major metropolis.
If society collapses. It's when society collapses.
When?
Like, what do they know that we don't?
Is this the Secret Onion article?
No, I didn't do that. That was Aiden's idea for next time.
No, it's the.
But it basically is.
Hook.
It basically is the Onion article.
This is the purge.
Right. Which safe room? Which panic rooms are best?
When it's you and Kenshiro in the desert. This is the 4 hot rocks you'll want to bathe on.
Which martial arts to train for surviving the Mad Max apocalypse?
These 10 pressure points to explode the organs of raiders you'll need to memorize.
When the last figment of hope escapes your mind, here's the quickest way to take your life.
Now you think this article will be written by some like insane depressed guy? This is written by like a 20-something bubbly person. So let me give you an example.
That's what I
There's
imagine.
a good reason billionaires are moving to New Zealand. If we reach end times, it's essentially one of 5 places you could possibly eke out a semi-normal existence.
Oh, Christ.
Oh, wait, Jace, before you go through the rest, is one of them space?
I actually don't know. I haven't read the whole thing.
Okay.
This is the inversion of the but not for you meme, where it's like, call an ambulance, but not for me. This is call an ambulance, but not for you, as like you put the gun to your own head.
And here's the way they millennially sum it up. Basically, human civilization is a non-equilibrium thermodynamic or dissipative system that must maintain a minimum level of available energy to avoid entropic decay and yet a higher level to permit physical growth. And Earth is, well, a finite source.
Is this like a nihilist?
This is a person who read like one urban planner's like theory about how
they're both black-pilled and a travel agent.
There's a famous academic who wrote a paper that wrote a thesis or whatever. That's like civilization behaves like energy systems, like they go up in energy and they become more civilized.
Add in climate change, pandemic.
I feel like I'm going to go up and be like, you're reading a lot of Gordon Wood? You think you understand thermodynamic systems and energy? Like, this is the dumbest, like, barely remembered, understood take on an academic theory possible.
Listen to this paragraph. Add in climate change, pandemics, economic inequality, and overall global interdependency, and there's a good chance we're headed towards something catastrophic. The question here is, if and when that happens, where do you want to be? I'll probably be dead.
So we have the foresight, according to this article, we have the foresight to not only predict, but more or less assume the destruction of civilization.
We can't fix that. We just have to move.
instead of doing anything to prevent or alter that course, it's going, here are the top 5 rocks to hide under when it happens.
It's the Ben Shapiro. Just sell
Right,
your
just
house
move.
if you're on. Yeah, just
Yeah.
move.
This is the trolley car problem, but instead of saying, do you switch the ring, it's like, how far these are the best places to run away from the lever when the police arrive after the trolley car
All right,
problem
I'm
happens.
going to tell you the 5 places, and I want you to tell me if you notice something about all 5.
Okay.
According to the researchers, the answer is New Zealand, Iceland, the UK, Australia, or Ireland.
Super white.
So
I wasn't even trying.
white British Commonwealth Islands.
Was this was this written by the English Empire?
It's written by the East India Company.
No, because they don't want us going to them.
Oh my god. The UK is in shambles.
It's in bloody shambles.
No
man.
one would go there. You're going to drown before
down
almost
bad.
anyone. God.
Yeah, that's
That's some
so this
good
is the
stuff.
plot to like 28 years later when they finally make that sequel.
The plot of 2012, the catastrophe movie was better.
Yeah.
Than this. Jesus. Good God. All right, I think that's enough of these. I still have a couple that are really dark, but I'm gonna hang on to those.
Yeah.
These were some good ones.
Well, we've learned a lot.
Man,
What a journey from bubonic chipmunks to
and drug drivers winning against the police.
well, you really told a narrative with these. You started with bubonic chipmunks and ended with a complete collapse.
A bubbly
of society.
acknowledgement of the collapse of civilization.
Yeah, as a determined.
I mean, I know that
end.
the first most important event going on right now is bubonic chipmunks, but I think a close second might be the prosecution.
Oh man, I can just imagine Jesse Ventura goes to Lake Tahoe. He's like, "Let me see the bubonic chipmunks. I know you've been doing research on them. Bunch of slack-jawed motherfuckers around here."
Yeah, I somehow don't think he's his brother's character.
He kind of is.
That was almost a clean segue, Alex.
Yeah, I did it, but it
talking
didn't
about
happen. But
fucking
no, the second most important thing seems to be the prosecution of whistleblowers, and by seems to be, I mean no one's talking about it. But I think in our estimation, it's up there. Aiden, why don't you take us away? What is the recent event we're referencing here with the prosecution of whistleblowers?
Sure. Yeah. So just recently, whistleblower Daniel Hale has been sentenced to almost 4 years in prison for disclosing information. It has been ruled illegally on the American drone strike program and the extrajudicial killing of many people. Daniel Hale felt was a great injustice. As someone who admittedly participated in that program, he was left with severe trauma and has written some pretty compelling statements about his time in that program and his reflections and how they've affected him, and how basically just how shoddy he believes the legal and intel justifications are for those programs, and going beyond kind of the still very relevant history of whistleblowers during the 21st century that we've seen with Edward Snowden and Chelsea Manning and many others. We are on the cusp of yet another American being convicted under the Espionage Act for trying to inform the public on what our government does, supposedly on our behalf, but often without really consulting us about what we think about it and whether we think it's ethical.
Yeah, the real 5D chess big brain part of this that explodes most people's conceptions of good and evil is that the majority of all the new Espionage Act prosecutions began under President Obama. and were continued under Trump. Trump was like, all right, if you're going to give me that power, I'll take it. But that confuses a lot of people because we're like, but Obama good, Trump, Orange Man bad. What happened? You know, without realizing that Obama single-handedly, even way more than Bush, expanded our drone program, carried out way more unmanned drone strikes, had no problem with it, encouraged it, promoted intelligence and security people who wanted to continue to ramp up the drone program. And one of the funniest quotes I took from this case is that essentially the nature of the Espionage Act, it was written to basically prosecute foreign spies. Like, if you remember during the Trump administration, there was some like random Russian chick who was hot, whoever was like, oh, she's a spy. And they're like, should we go prosecute her? Or she blew some fucking, senator for intel. She wasn't prosecuted with the Espionage Act, I don't believe. But this guy is. And the justification given by the government's, the prosecutor, was that when you put information on the internet, even if you're not a foreign agent, you can't control who receives your information, so you may as well be a foreign agent, because foreign agents can get access to that information. So essentially, anyone is a spy. Anyone is a foreign agent who is betraying their country if you ever say anything on the internet that's classified. Which is just genius level marketing.
It's unknowable. Like, if you're going to have a non-transparent system where people are essentially told, just trust your government, it knows what it's doing, then how do you know whether what you are posting is dangerous or not? How does the public know whether what you're posting is dangerous or not? Like, the government is prosecuting people, saying they violated the trust of the government, but the government has not established the trust it's supposed to have with the people. Like, the government hasn't said, here's how you know that what we're doing was the right thing. And if a government says every time that they try to reveal what's going on, that's dangerous, it smells an awful lot like they don't want us to know what they're doing.
You don't sound very patriotic, Alex. Our government exists. Just trust it.
It seems awfully suspicious that whenever anyone tries to leak anything about what we're doing, that's somehow always like a risk to our troops or a risk to our national security. It's like, maybe they should demonstrate the risk more than us.
Oh, no, that was mentioned. That was mentioned. Even the judge acknowledged no one got hurt from this.
Right.
The judge literally said, you're not being prosecuted for being the hero you are. You're just being prosecuted for leaking classified documents. The judge was like, I love you, sir. You're a veteran. You're a hero. You're a patriot. But you leaked those documents and you admitted to it, son. Jail for 3.5 years.
It should be mentioned, he's not being prosecuted for murdering civilians in violation of international law,
which he approved of which was his job in the military.
Right, like this is what's so perverse about this. Not only are we prosecuting people for being whistleblowers, which is already disgusting, but this guy was also complicit in this international regime of assassination, which violates so many forms of both international norms and ethics, as well as literal conventions and laws that we've become party to as the United States.
Laws that we're literally still prosecuting 100-year-old Nazi guards over.
Like, if it either it's a thing or it's not. Like, and if we take these things seriously, then we're already in violation of international law in a pretty serious way, because half the time these people are not even combatants. We're not even in a war with them. Like, we're striking people
more than half.
What I'm saying is, like a ridiculous proportion of the time, we're not even at war with the country we're attacking. The people don't even know that they're in a conflict. Like, we're essentially blowing up civilians and non-combatants, or even a little grayer, but combatants who are not currently in a conflict. Like, people who might be military age, but they're not currently fighting the U.S. in any meaningful sense. Like, this is huge. These are huge crimes.
It's basically a perfect illustration of the realist perspective, that states will do whatever they need to do in the name of their security. This is like a complete separation of the idea of security from legality. Like, you prosecute when something threatens your security, or I guess also when you're unhappy that your dirty secrets are aired out in the open. Yeah, you're completely correct, Alex, that to say that this is about law is really asinine, to be honest.
Yeah, it's absolutely farce. Like, here's an article by Samuel Alexander from the Florida Law Review, who basically says in his abstract that because of double tap and triple tap drone strikes, which is when you intentionally strike the same place multiple times to kill the first responders.
Right, it's not immediate. You shoot once,
Um,
you wait for people to come try and recover the bodies, then you kill
Yeah.
the people who are obviously trying to help.
Yeah, he argues that, quote, this note argues that to conform to international law, the United States should cease the use of double trap drone strikes immediately if it has not already. Additionally, it should make the criteria it uses to target individuals for drone strikes as transparent as necessary to determine the process's legality under international law. Without transparency on the part of the cooperating governments, it is nearly impossible to determine the legality of a covert military program. I mean, this is like basic legal knowledge of how these treaties work and what we are party to. There's no legal case for saying like drone strikes right now are unambiguously good or legal. The best you could say is like, well, it's unclear, yet to be determined, no data present, right? So to use the legal system to prosecute someone for revealing an almost certainly illegal act is kind of crazy. Now, like I would also like to point out, like, this is a deeply immoral activity, regardless of even whether it was legal, and I think that's actually the most important thing. But if we're going to operate on this like realm of pure legality, it's still wrong. It's still wrong. Like there's no good reason to say that the person breaking the most laws are this guy. Yeah,
it's a la carte law legalism. It's America's prosecuting this guy under our laws in our country, but we don't have to follow international laws in other countries because we're head honcho, because we're the head of NATO, because we have the nukes, because we control everything, because we're the hegemon. That's the argument. The argument is we can violate law whenever we want, but citizens of our country can't violate our laws because we have power and we will do anything to stop that.
it's naked power.
Yeah, I mean,
it's right, exactly.
It's I mean, it's echoing again the sentiment from last week about when there's some brutality against protesters in Cuba, that's horrible.
When we do it right, exactly. When our military force and our security forces do the brutality to our people, we could do whatever we want. It's just our power.
That's just law being enforced.
This is so drone strikes were massively expanded under Obama because he wanted to tamp down on the putting troops on the ground.
The perception of our troops dying.
Right, because he didn't want to see as many troops dying because it was a propaganda coup to make it seem like he was more of an anti-war president. Which I guess the total number of dead went down
of American troops
compared to mass conflict in Iraq. But when we switched over to the system of drone strikes, we actually became even more unethical in who we were killing because you don't have eyes on the ground to confirm who you're killing. So when the report that Hale leaked revealed that about 90% of the people in a 5-month span were not confirmed to be anything but random civilians who happened to be near the targets, that's a way worse ratio than we even achieved by just sending troops to Iraq.
Right.
Like it's a disgustingly arbitrary form of murder, which is like it's on par with mass shooting events in the United States, where it's like we just spray fired and hoped we got the guy we wanted, and for that to be sort of shoehorned into this concept of like respectable, law-abiding status quo basically requires the total dehumanization and devaluing of the life of people in the places we hit, which is why they don't hit us, right? Because if they shot drone strikes in the United States, we would have to actually investigate the moral properties of blowing up several random minivans.
Yep.
And because we do that in the hills of Afghanistan, we just assume when the state says enemy combatants, it's enemy combatants. No, it's usually like women and children and random like old people are going to the funeral or going to the wedding, or someone who's like in a business suit who was in the wrong place at the wrong time. I mean, when the United States makes a regular practice of saying these people are enemies killed in action because no one's proven they're not. I mean, how is that any different than Trump saying, fake news or QAnon? It's totally unfalsifiable, conspiratorial gibberish. Like, they're absolutely not enemies. The burden of proof is on them. Prove that these people were enemies. They're not.
The tragic reality of war is that the closer you are on the ground level, the better your intel. And, for example, I just recently rewatched Black Hawk Down. And the famous case of Black Hawk Down, which they don't cover in the movie, the inciting incident is that a helicopter strike we ordered killed 200 peace negotiators who were trying to end the conflict of warlords in Somalia. And we thought we were there killing the warlords of Somalia. And now that put a lot of our soldiers at risk because those choppers are manned and there were supporting people there, and it was dangerous. But the reality is, when you give an actual human and a squad of people decision-making power, and they're on the ground, and they can see the target they're shooting at, they make often informed and ethical decisions. Most people, even trained killers, know if it's the wrong target, they won't take the shot. Know if it's if it's the wrong place, they'll find another different way to enter. By dehumanizing our military process, we dehumanize who we target, how we gain intel, and where the blood ends. And so the irony is that even from a pure militaristic perspective, we're fucking this up because we're not killing the people who we think are evil. We're only making things worse, and we're unkillable because we don't have any men down there to be killed to make them feel like at least we're getting some vengeance back. It's just raining hell from the skies. And there is no possible universe in which us raining hell from the skies against the terrorists makes world peace or furthers peace at all.
Well, also the irony of calling them terrorists while we annihilate civilians is pretty stark. But the Bloody Monday attack that you're referring to in Somalia has basically been confirmed historically, and in relatively short order, like within a few months, by reporters and analysts, to have been an overwhelmingly destructive attack on civilians.
Right.
That it was not a military target.
And best case scenario, it was a mistake. And worst case, it was intentional to sabotage peace.
It killed dozens to hundreds. Well, there were hundreds wounded, several dozen at least killed. It was almost entirely older people who were like tribal elders negotiating peace deals with the United States.
And that was in the 90s with manned choppers, not drones from a mile away.
And what's important to me about that is we do not in the West talk about Bloody Monday. That's never discussed. It's never like, okay, this is the logical part that led up to the Battle of Mogadishu.
We don't talk about the Highway of Death. We don't talk about any of this shit.
Right. So like when we talk about like the hate is for freedom.
No, the hate is because we shoot Hellfire missiles at
them. Like no, it's like the hate is because we're committing like atrocities against their people. Like it's not confusing. Like it's a laughable propaganda coup to say like the only things we report on the news is the relatively uninteresting, banal actions we take. And then when people respond to the horrific violence that wasn't reported on with their own violence, it's like, look at these monsters.
I mean, the funny thing is, back a year ago, we were having, in terms of COVID deaths, a 9/11 every day. No one said shit. No one cared. It just was life. But when an actual 9/11 happens, where it's like people who are not us attack us, we lose our shit. We've now spent 20 years doing 9/11s all day, every day across the world. And with the pandemic, we've been doing it to ourselves. Every day's a 9/11. You'll get a 9/11. You'll get a 9/11.
I don't want to pretend like it's on the same scale. Like, obviously, these drone strikes are not killing the same amount of people in any given attack as 9/11. But because they're not keeping a good count, or rather, if they are, they're not allowing
Okay, Alex, they're killing as many as got killed in the Pentagon hit. Like,
right, exactly. Like, we don't know how many.
Flight 93.
We don't know how many people are being assassinated in the name of the United States because we're not allowed to know as the people living in the United States.
Because if you tell us, we'll prosecute you.
Right. So basically, we have no idea what we're doing around the rest of the world. We have no idea who's being murdered, why they're being murdered, if there was any justification for it, if there's any legal precedent for any of this that makes any sense. We're just supposed to trust that this is all good. But like, if we're supposed to trust that this is all good, have they made any effort to create like a framework for why we're supposed to trust that this is all good?
Aiden, I have a question for you.
What is the groundwork there?
As someone who's been employed the most recently, what do you think about Daniel Hale's description of how he basically got PTSD'd and triggered by his co-workers when he was working as a private military contractor? What do you think about the kind of corporate aspect of this?
I think it kind of speaks to a very intentional kind of mechanic for how programs like this are carried out. Because, as you're talking about, it's much more distant, but it still requires people to be complicit. Hale himself at some point. But yeah, both with the USAF and then his next employer was, I believe, a subsidiary of the DoD. It is it's kind of you know, it's something that it's a good question because you see it in every corporate setting that you work in. You know, even if it's not dealing with life and death, there is a with any kind of mechanism that requires some kind of ethical aligning or some kind of I
Or
guess
even
dissonance, I
government
suppose.
oversight. Just
Which
subcontract it out. Just privatize it.
yeah, exactly. It's pretty concerning to see it kind of echoed in things where people's lives are literally at risk and being devastated. Like it's one thing to go to work and like see and hear people callously talk about like
Becky's pregnant or something.
basically
But yo, bro, you on your
Becky's
lunch break? You
pregnant
want to see that
or
drone strike we did today? We have it on HD footage.
yeah
Oh, did that guy came to talk to you and tell you that like you ordered a drone strike that killed his family? Cool, bro. I got that last night in COD.
and it's like it's both kind of just human coping, the way that humans work, but it's also like I think most times a kind of attitude fostered top down to stop exactly what Daniel Hale did from happening. Whether it's going to, I mean, HR doesn't normally just works for upper management, but whatever accountability mechanics you have in your company, when you come across some kind of inequality, mistreatment, abuse, whatever, um, it's it kind of goes exactly to what you asked last, Alex, which is why, if this is justified, let's put aside security considerations, just facts about outcomes. Why do those need to be hidden from us? Why is it wrong to disclose that? What
Right?
possible
Shouldn't
threat
that
could
be
that be?
informative and helpful?
Unless right, if you truly believe that this is right for America, for the world, then it's just kind of informing people. And if you think it's right and it has a good effect, then the public should support you, ideally. And if you're not confident in that, then you're kind of just admitting that we're not a
Yeah,
democracy.
the secret's out. Even the military knows what they're doing is evil. They don't believe in it. They don't believe in the cause. They just believe in the violence. Because they know that as soon as anyone
I mean,
heard this shit, they'd freak out, which is exactly what happens whenever someone hears the shit, they freak out.
yeah, you hear generals and military officers testify about it all the time about like the public. They might not belittle the public. They might think that they're still
They're
serving the
babies
public
who
in their own
can't
way,
know too much.
but yeah, yeah, exactly. They don't understand the realities of war, and it's true in many ways. The average person doesn't. Um, but there are many things that is just a complete excuse for, which is that like in a certain way, I pay taxes. I pay for through a complicated channel of funds being pushed around. My money is going towards killing Afghani children. I don't want that to be the case. So why don't I get a say in that? Why
Because you
don't
don't
I at least get to know
understand.
about it?
Ethics and compassion are bad. You're the ones who don't
Yeah.
understand, not
Well,
us. Not us. These soulless
okay.
killers.
Oh, yeah. I'll put ethics aside. How about the fact that anti-American sentiment, as observed already in this conversation, has vastly increased
And
since
the
our
money
time in
is
the
being
Middle
spent
East.
very inefficiently. Fucking libertarians can get on board with this. Fiscal conservatives can get on board with leaking about this.
Yeah, the budget is completely bloated beyond any logical rationale. And I mean, the fact that we could do enormous good anywhere in the world we chose to, including our own country, with the same monies instead of annihilating children, that would be cool. But I think the utter lack of regard for whether we're even killing the right targets and whether we're killing civilians or not, like, or whether we're basically just doing it to continue getting the budgets approved by Congress to keep
Right, the
doing
way
it.
cops get their budgets raised.
Yeah, I think it's revealed by several incidents in history. Like, so during the 80s, the United States famously shot down an Iranian civilian airline, killing almost 300 people, all of whom were civilians. It was not a military target, and they could identify that it wasn't a military target, and they shot it down anyway because the guy in the ship was just being an
Yeah,
aggressive
Pablo
psychopath.
Escobar did the same thing.
Now, generally, when you commit what is essentially an act of horrific terrorism, you acknowledge that you have done such and make every effort you can at restitution and never doing so again. The United States refused to apologize for doing it. they technically they agreed to do like $60 million or something like of a kind of a hush money to Iran to not
Did that
continue
come with an
talking to them
NDA?
about it. But like essentially, Reagan claims, oh well, that counts as an apology. It's like, no, you didn't acknowledge wrongdoing. Like, you didn't acknowledge that you're blowing away civilians for no reason when you knew they were civilians, right? And the United States disregard for civilian life is consistently shown in the conflicts we engage in because we don't prioritize it. We don't go like, okay, here's the disciplinary like court-martialing action that the higher-ups have to go through if they order drone strikes that blow up civilians. The only people who ever get court-martialed for killing civilians are grunts. If you're a soldier in Iraq and you kill some woman and her children in a house, all right, there's going to be a report about that. But if you're in the top champ, maybe if there's
if you're the guy who ordered it, you get pardoned by Trump.
Yeah, but if you're the guy who ordered it, then you just like go out celebrate and you get some beers. Like, it doesn't mean anything.
You get a Medal of
to you.
Freedom.
There's absolutely no accountability for the top level decision making that kills civilians.
But see, Alex, it used to just be that we had no regard for non-American civilian life. And it's reached its final form. We now have no regard for any civilian life. American lives too. Fuck them, let them die. You'll get healthcare. Move. Our disregard for humanity is at our own borders. It's the war we wage on our own country every day.
And it's apparent how normalized drone strikes have become, in that like
that Obama's joking about doing it to Sasha Malia's boyfriends.
Sure. Yeah, that's a whole other level. But like, think about like during the Vietnam War was like Nixon and Kissinger's secret bombings in Cambodia without consulting Congress. That at least for a period of history
was seen as bad.
Rebalanced the dynamic of power between Congress and the executive branch. There's an increased check on executive power. This is just normal. Presidents do this. This is fine. It's like Congress doesn't even care that they're committing acts of war in secret, killing hundreds of people without any consultation, any kind of check.
If anything, Congress loves it because they love shirking this responsibility and letting the executive handle that mess instead of them having to handle it.
Yeah, it's so heavy to kind of have to decide that the U.S. is going to war. This is so much easier.
It should also be mentioned that this is not extended to any of the countries we don't like. Like, when countries start using, like, chemical weapons or weapons of mass destruction because they're desperate and they're, like, on the verge of losing.
Yeah, the shit that we accuse Iran of doing literally every day.
We don't then go, well, what? They had no choice. It was their national security. Like, they had to, what else could they have done? They needed to do what they could to survive. Like, we only ever use this in a self-serving way. Like, we don't say, like, well, it's a precedent that any country that feels that their national security is sufficiently threatened can ignore international law. Like, that's just a U.S. thing. That, or I guess like an Israel thing. Yeah. Like the U.S. and its
U.S. and U.S. accessories.
Yeah.
The U.S. a country that in modern history has had one attack on its soil. One.
And so, like, the reality is the U.S. has basically decided it's above international law. It's above any kind of consideration of ethics. It has taken this position with power, but it justifies it with democracy and all these pretenses. And then it says, we're going to do anything to anyone, and you're not even going to know about it. But if you do know about it, it was good, and the person who told you is bad. And so now we've started prosecuting whistleblowers because the final war, as Jason alluded to, is on the American public, both in the form of not caring if they die from crushing poverty, homelessness, drug abuse, mismanaged pandemic. It's also a war on their right to know what's going on. Like, it's literally a war against informing the public.
In 10 years, some fucking general is going to argue in front of Congress that the First Amendment does not give you the right to knowledge. That's going to happen. Oh, we don't have a right to free information.
I feel like that's probably happened in a secret meeting already. Like, how do they justify this? Like, I guess what I'm saying is when Obama decided that this was a good time to start prosecuting whistleblowers like crazy, because Obama prosecuted more whistleblowers than all previous presidents combined, all of them combined. And Obama is going in there as the hope and change candidate who's supposed to end the wars, bring the shit home, restore dignity and honor after the disgrace of the Bush years. And his decision is to turn us into, like, the Sith.
Oh, Alex, did you get his invitation to his 60th birthday bash?
Yeah.
The maskless one with 2,000 people?
Well, in his defense, he also increased protections for people who report on waste, fraud,
We got the CFPB,
and
motherfuckers.
abuse. So,
Yeah.
Your credit card rates are a little bit
basically,
lower.
if you see anyone that's costing us too much money, you can report that, I guess, maybe.
Outside of the most fringe left-wing media, of which there are only a handful that have any, widespread distribution, who during the Obama years was going, this guy is doing all these things, this guy is assassinating people, this guy is double and triple trap drones, drone striking, this guy is supporting the war in Yemen. Like, these are all fringe, these were considered fringe positions that even like mainstream Bernie people couldn't say out loud.
People who are no
Because that
longer
would-
a part of the quote unquote too big Democratic Party.
Right. So, like, if you were saying this kind of thing, you were a marginal figure, almost by definition. You were not getting on on TV for sure, and it was very difficult to get into print media outside of the handful of leftist sort of publications that consistently don't care if they violate norms. But the media was not covering this. They were not talking about this.
The irony
They're not
is,
talking about it except to say it happened, maybe.
the irony is they were with Snowden, and Obama tried to dunk on Snowden so hard, so many times. And he's like the one that got away. He's like fucking Moby Dick of whistleblowers.
I mean, look, it becomes this ridiculous thing. It's the same thing as like the police problem. It's like whether or not someone's a good apple. They start getting into like the moral prosecution of whether each of these whistleblowers is a flawless human. Like you have to find the perfect whistleblower. Like, this person can't have any personal problems and can't have any trauma and can't have any aspirations.
God forbid the people ordering the drone strikes don't have moral misgivings.
Right. We never investigate anyone except the person who's doing the one good thing, which is whistleblower. Like, whether or not Hale had ambitions to become a reporter was used as a cudgel to destroy him in this trial. Like, oh, he wasn't leaking the data out of goodness of his heart. He was leaking it because he wanted to prove he could do reporting.
That's the other fucked thing, is that he might have gotten away with this if he was just officially a journalist.
It's like, you're not investigating the moral properties of anything except the person who's being victimized. It's like when they report on whether or not the person who was shot in a police killing had a criminal record.
Exactly, which is all just right-wing fog,
Right.
red media.
That's not the question. Whether or not Daniel Hale wanted to be a reporter has zero bearing on whether the information he was releasing was vital to the public interest and the maintenance of national security, or to the well-being of American democracy, or to the following of international law. Like, all of this horseshit about, oh, well, look, Julian Assange has some strange right-wing libertarian views. Like, I don't care.
It always just becomes kill the messenger.
The fact that WikiLeaks revealed enormous complicity in rigging democracy is a little more important than whether Assange is a crank. Like, the individual is not the question. Like, I don't care if Donald Trump was the leaker. If Donald Trump was like, by the way, turns out UFOs totally real. Here's the
But
documents.
that's what everyone was waiting for.
That would be great. I don't care who the messenger is. The messenger could be a piece of shit. But if the message is essential and it's helping people in aggregate that it is released, that should be happening. Right?
bet.
Like, we should not be prosecuting that.
I bet half of the people who voted for Trump are like, he's going to tell us the truth about JFK. Like,
Right.
come on. He's at least the disruptor. He's the instant, tell us what the fuck's actually going on.
Yeah.
God damn it.
It's just really incredible that they always manage to convince us. And part of this is where the media frames it, but really the media frames it this way because the government tells them to frame it this way, which is each of these is a moral analysis of the individual whistleblower instead of a moral analysis of the entire system of death that they're revealing. And so, when we're focused on the individual, like we always fucking do in this like late stage capitalist neoliberal shit show, we can never make systemic analysis. We can never just say, like, is this a thing that we should be doing in general? And is this person's actions contributing to or detracting from that process? That's the only salient moral question.
It's kindergarten. One kid is looking at another kid's test to cheat. The other kid, a kid to his other side, sees it and tattles. Everyone blames the tattler for tattling on cheating, not the cheating.
Right.
It's literally ingrained then.
And
yeah,
it's bizarre to me because like the closest parallel is a much less serious case, which is like, can you separate art from the artist when an artist commits some horrible act? Yes. But in that case, even the question is, like, if you still enjoy their art, you might be giving them publicity. You might be giving them money if you're buying their albums or streaming their albums. in this case, these people are consistently still being exiled or put in jail for years. So the only question is whether their information is important. I don't understand how the question of their character even comes into
Right, we're not buying their
because
mixtape.
it's right. It's not like when you give over documents that you haven't created, you've taken from somewhere else, and are releasing to the public. Your character is smeared over them in some kind of filter that
Right, like
only
they
the press apparently
editorialize the
can.
documents. They put their twang on it.
Yeah. It's not like exactly. It's not like they signed each one with like a some kind of nom de plume.
This note and
It's
stamp
very
of
bizarre to
approval
me
on
to
each
that.
sheet.
The judge in the Hale case specifically forbade the discussion of the ethics of the actual drone strikes.
Correct.
But it was okay to talk about whether or not this guy wanted a news job.
And openly praised Hale as a veteran hero, while the prosecutor said, no, he's just an egotistical asshole who wants to be famous.
It's just really incredible. Like it could not be more transparent that whatever legal recourse we apparently have in this system is not designed to work for the people.
The United States government,
just not.
The United States government argued that Daniel Hale was in this for clout. They accused him of being a clout chaser.
He literally is getting 4 years for clout chasing. But the one of the bigger problems I have with this is the way that media covers this is as a thing that happens that needed to happen. And it's kind of sad sometimes for the individual if they were like a decent person, but the security state's got a security state. It's like the media freaked out during the entire Trump administration. I mean, let's be honest. The media broadly disliked Trump, even if they helped him win. And they were going along with everyone else and saying, like, look, Trump's a piece of shit. He shouldn't be in office. He's disgracing norms. He's doing everything wrong. And admittedly, it was Trump's administration that started the prosecution against Hale. But it was Biden's administration that finished it. Biden could have pulled this before the end at any point in the last 5-6 months. He could have said, my Justice Department is no longer pursuing this. You're free to go. He could have basically said, I'm not going to prosecute whistleblowers.
I could be wrong. Wasn't during the Obama administration, Eric Holder in particular was like, no, Obama, I'll hold my beer. I will prosecute all these motherfuckers. And Obama was like, all right, sure.
I mean, whether it was Obama directly or whether it was Obama signing off on it, one way or the other, that's what was.
What I'm saying is Eric Holder, who was is whatever the fuck this stupid bullshit job is, was like, I hate these motherfuckers. And he went after all these people. But
to me, it gets back to the fundamental inadequacy of the sort of partisan frame with which we approach politics in our current period, which is it's enough to get the blue guy in and the red guy out. And it's like, this is transparently false. Like this is one of the many things that is extremely wrong right now with the way our society is operating. And there's no real media pushback on the fact that this should not be happening, and it's happening under a Democrat. And it's almost like because we have a Democrat, it can happen even easier.
Yeah.
Because now we can just trust that they know what they're doing. They're not the psycho-fascists. But it's like not criticizing government and allowing it to do whatever it's doing is how fascism works. Because you're not stopping it from doing what it wants to do. Like the fact that, it's like, well, is it fascist or just dictatorial? It's like, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, if you allow a government carte blanche to do evil things, because you trust that it's a better government, or it's better than the one that could have been, or it's like sort of like a Candide, best of all possible worlds attitude towards life. We are not taking seriously the fact that evil things are going to continue happening under any administration if we do not keep their fucking feet to the fire. And I think having like these blasé articles that are like, oh yeah, I guess that guy's going to prison, that's not holding their feet to the fire.
No, in
like,
fact, the media's role here is to cheerlead and say this goes on Biden's resume as a win.
Right. Oh, look, his Justice Department got one of these guys. It's like, got who? And why? Like, those are important questions. But it's just kind of like, look, another threat to our national security taken care of. Throw them in a hole.
You know what it'd be like? Remember in Watchmen in the beginning, like you see some of the superheroes getting killed? It's like if the supervillains guild's like, good news today, we got another superhero. Like, that's what we're doing. Evil is triumphing over good in a moral sense. And being cheerled the whole way.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's kind of a tired question at this point, but it's one of the most salient ones or often raised ones of our time, which is like, what does nationalism mean? Like, it's a bad thing in general, I think, for at least a leftist to think about, because it almost always means blind support that leads into fascism. But like, in my mind, if you were ever to kind of put forward a positive form of nationalism, a pride in America or a hope for America. It's exactly what these kind of whistleblowers are doing, which is trying to, one, aid their fellow members of the public to be able to make informed decisions so that we can all try to critique what we think is wrong with America and make it better. But we can't even do that most of the time as best as we want to, because they are doing everything they can to, one, hide it from us to start with, their actions both overseas and domestically, and then whenever they can, create a chilling effect so that no one else will ever try to make us an informed public again, because the status quo is what nationalism is. It's
You're
what
exactly
America
right.
is.
And
Because,
we recognized this in the 70s, at least with Nixon. Like, the leakers were the heroes. The leakers were the patriots. The leakers were the people who
yeah, I
had
was taught that.
love for their country and wanted their country to be better. That has totally 180'd since then.
Yeah, Deep Throat would be like Fox News, and probably more outlets than we would like to admit would be calling Deep Throat a traitor, or at least like a misguided drug addict or something. Even though he was the associate director of
Like the Rachel Maddow contingent would be on there, like, we cannot have these leaks, and then they bring on a guy from the Pentagon or from
Bring in some
FBI to talk
ghoul.
about the danger. Like, if you look at the people who MSNBC has on, they're just a bunch of hawks. They're a bunch of like deep state guys defending these programs. Like, we don't have a mainstream news channel that reports on these whistleblowing events as if they were even remotely good.
Because the news is not for the public anymore. The news, as we talked about last time, is a mirror. The news is for other rich, educated people to go, yes, give me permission to be a cunt. The news to disseminate information, to inform the masses, to make educated democratic decisions, has stopped existing, and it stopped existing a long time ago.
And this is at a time when we're all super horny to talk about espionage as bad, because we've all like drank the Kool-Aid that Russia made our election happen through fraud. So like, we're all ready to talk about how evil it is to have a secretive KGB style interference with our democracy, and like everything's being rigged by like a Soviet KGB conspiracy from a Bond movie. But when our own government is doing to us, it's like just blasé, like, hey, what are you gonna do?
Here's a closing question. Do you think the big D democratic emphasis and focus on Russiagate almost opened the door for Trump to talk about rigging with the second election?
Of course it fucking did, because it was all horseshit.
Because what I'm saying is, if Rachel Maddow from day one shut the fuck up about Russia, do you think Trump has easily been like, look, folks, it was rigged last time for me, now it's rigged against me? Like,
the amount of evidence that they have managed to compile for Russiagate is pathetic. Like, I'm not saying there was nothing, but like, there were more targeted ads in like,
everyone's
like
DMs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there were more targeted ads in like Eastern Europe than there were in
my point is this:
United
do you
States.
think the getting America psychically prepared for everything is rigged gave permission to the right wing to say, yeah, everything's rigged now by the Democrats?
Yeah, because we have the Democratic Party reviving McCarthyism. When the Democratic Party becomes the McCarthyite Party, what can't the Republicans say? Like, when we've essentially said the more reasonable, when the more reasonable, supposedly, of the parties becomes an insane conspiratorial witch hunt of the left, for, Jill Stein is like secretly making out with Putin as they like plant nukes. Like, this is like canon film shit. Like I'm fully expecting, a guy dual wielding machine guns to like blow away KGB agents as they storm New York City. Like, that is the kind of paranoid delusions that we have been living in for years. I mean, it's kind of died down since 2020, but like, for pretty much the entirety of Trump, all the time that the Democrats wasted on, like, yes, Russia secretly engineered Trump, and not like hundreds of years of American xenophobia, racism, fucking over the poor, building up white supremacy, all these things. Like, none of that is what's important. It's Russia.
Man,
Russia did this.
One day we got to talk about the conspiracy theory that 50,000 Chinese soldiers invaded America, and we somehow killed them all with a bunker buster. We got to talk about that conspiracy theory.
Yeah, it's just when MSNBC is waiting for us to be saved by Chuck Norris, I don't think there's any limits on what the right wing feels that they can get away with, because the shit they were saying was more right wing and insane than most of the things that the Bush administration was saying a decade earlier. So when you've entered a sort of like a neo McCarthyism, and you're the more left wing party, everything is on the table, and reality becomes whatever you want to make it. Like, you want to talk about manufacturing reality. Saying that the people who are 90% civilians are enemy combatants being killed, that's manufacturing reality. That's as fraudulent as saying that, chloroclidoquine or whatever will fix your COVID.
You reversed it.
Yeah, I don't give a shit. It's dyslexia at work, folks. You hate to see it, but like, that's the same shit. It's just disinformation for the sake of political advantage. And the Democrats do it just as much, but the Democrats say it more politely, and they coax it in like more honeyed language, and they say it in a way that sounds like they're making allusions to some sort of reality.
And to me, that's why it's worse. It's less honest.
Come on.
I mean,
it'd be evil. Just say it.
It's like we all accept the existence of the Patriot Act and the actions that have stemmed from it, and we all joke about like an FBI agent being assigned to each of us, listening on our inane conversations. Yeah, but to most people, that's just like a funny meme, even if they know in the back of their heads that there's some truth to it, like that it stems from something true. But yeah, when it's another country doing something that probably doesn't even affect them and largely isn't true, then it's a catastrophe. One that, if you're talking about the Middle East, justifies killing so many innocent people. It's just a complete distortion of priorities and a manufactured dissonance that honestly our government relies upon to continue doing these kind of extrajudicial,
and it's so
and arguably
like,
extrajudicial convictions.
They know what they're doing is illegal. They know what they're doing is immoral. It's totally cynical. They're not in any way operating in good faith, and they're like, "Oh, we have to prosecute this person criminally." They're just exercising power.
And it's not even for like Donald Trump brand, like take their oil reasons. It's just for evil.
It's just the operation of the state. It's just like to become the status quo. But to briefly return to something you mentioned, Aiden, about this idea of like we're punishing the one person who still believes in America. It's kind of incredible that like the pushback to the madness of the last several years. I don't know how far you want to go back.
It's like, why haven't you lost faith yet?
The pushback is everyone who still has faith is the danger. Like the Bernie type people who still think we can do like FDR level reforms are radical Marxists, apparently. Right? Like the people
and will somehow
who
destroy the country that was saved using the same methods.
Right, like the people who want to do basic, like centrist restrictions on the absolute power of capital, who just want to kind of bring us back to the middle and make it so that this is a livable conditions for people who are otherwise coerced. That's considered like, this is madness.
You know what it's like?
That's beyond the pale.
You know what it's like? It's like the people wearing disguises to go get their vaccines. Because the average sentiment now is, oh, you're not blackpilled? Oh, you don't hate everything? Oh, you don't want to destroy the country? We feel shamed and ostracized and put into pressure that we feel ethical impulses. The norm is no, fuck everything. Everything's fucked. We're all going to die.
When you believe strongly enough in the mythology of of American goodness that you put your life on the line to inform the American public, and you think that America can be made better by doing the kind of whistleblowing heroics that, as you say, like Deep Throat and the previous whistleblowers of history have done, and then you get annihilated for it, it's really kind of setting a tone for what is still permissible, and it is grim acceptance.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's a transparent message that what we expect from you is complacency. Even though the rhetoric we love is that America is the bastion of innovators and adventurers, what we really want from you is to just accept what we shove down your throat.
Consume product.
Yeah, it's a grim reality, but I think it's important to think about and talk about like we have, because I think it's pretty apparent as we just summarized that if you push back at all, even by standing by the values that America loves to spout, you get punished for it. You either die or you end up with your life ruined. And that's no accident.
I mean, and to briefly return to the idea of you need to have the most sort of desperation porn to get saved. I think the only thing that saved Reality Winner was her name. From like a similar event, like the fact that she was female and the fact that she had a ridiculous name, and this is someone else who was brutally,
that's
savagely
also like there's a
punished.
culture war aspect of her too, because she's like a modern day
Right.
snowflake lib bullshit.
Like 90% of the coverage of her was like, haha, Reality Winner.
More like
But,
reality loser.
Right, but it's like this woman did the exact same thing. Like she tried to reveal classified information that was showing illegal and unethical acts the United States was doing, and she went to jail. And now, I mean, it's really sad. Like there's an article I read about her where she's basically sitting in like she's confined to her house now, even after leaving prison for an even long. She's under an even more like
but hey, it's no different than anyone else during COVID.
And this is like a young woman, and
all under house arrest.
Her friends are like bringing her sand from the beach in like a doggy bin so that she can put her feet in the sand and feel like she's going to the beach. Like it's really sad. It's like so pathetic.
But that's unnecessary.
I almost feel like it's just this is what we'll do to you. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I think they're even letting this get reported to the extent that they're letting this get reported because they don't want the next whistleblower to think they can go to the beach.
It's why when you smash a bug in your room, you leave it there as a warning.
Right. If another centipede comes in this house, they know what's up. Yeah, exactly. It's really sick. And
it's why Vlad the Impaler put people's heads on pikes.
It's an active effort to say, not only is there no hope, but if you try to have hope, it'll be even worse for you than grim acceptance.
Yeah, and just to be clear, by getting off easy, we're talking about, I believe, 4 years in prison, right?
And who knows what horrible shit will happen to him in prison. Look, he could go to prison.
Yeah,
this is actually a big problem in the UK. He could go to prison and become radicalized. He could become a racist in prison. He could become a terrorist in prison. Like all sorts of horrible shit can happen to you in prison, especially
or he could get COVID and die.
Hey, he could be Joe Exotic.
Or he could get murdered because it's really cool to kill people who are considered traitors. Like when you send people to a dysfunctional prison system, right? Or you could get raped by prison guards. Like there's so many problems with the U.S. prison system that to send someone there for any period of time immediately assumes they're at risk of a million different infractions.
Yeah, but maybe in the best case scenario, he'll become the shot caller just like he was in the military. And he's like ordering hits on people.
Yeah, that's great. Let's send this guy who tried desperately to reform the system and his PTSD from murder and make him and make him the next fucking Walter White.
That'd be sick.
Like he said, because I'm the one who strikes. Like, no, I'm sorry. I'd rather that not be the case.
All right. Well, folks, call your congressman. Waste their time.
Yeah.
Tell them to try and write a bill getting rid of the Espionage Act or something. I don't know. Become a Russian spy. I don't care.
Yeah. If you have a congressman who thinks that putting whistleblowers in jail is a good idea, go scream at them.
More realistically, find local organizations with missions that you believe in.
Donate money to people on. Give too much money to some random bitch on the internet.
Google GoFundMe's and then blast past their goals.
Just because basically it's what it's really just. It's just like the straight to the moon shit. It's just like let's see how much we could get into. Not let's help the most people. It's not utilitarianism.
I'm in hands.
Let's just end this whole woman's career. All right, well,
this was a bit grimmer than I think we were hoping to end on, but I don't know what else we expected. Funny. Yeah, I don't know what else we expected with whistleblowers. So that's it for our show for this time, folks.
Tune in next time for the Apocalypse Bunker.
I hope you had a blast. I know that some other people overseas did.
Look forward to weekly updates on those chipmunks.
You'll be hearing from our FBI agents.
We will see you next time. Signing off.
Bye.
Adios.
Hey, thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoy what we do here at the Non-Essential Workers Podcast and you want to support us, please check us out at patreon.com/non-essential-workers-podcast or by clicking the link below.
For $5, you get access to the Patreon feed and twice as many total episodes.
How many more?
I'll say it one more time for the back. Twice. Anyways, thanks and see you next time.